So students, welcome back. Now our mooc unit is on Bitcoin. So in our first section, Thomas and I are going to discuss about the paying method that mentions in our reading. So as we read from the article, Thomas, there are several common paying methods that's still in operation at this moment, like check, cash, and credit card. So why don't we share our experience about using these paying methods with our students and our observations of these paying methods?
That's a good idea. Traditionally, in the past, we always used to use, for example, cash to exchange for goods and services. However, as time went on, we moved from more and more from cash to checks, and then from checks to credit cards. And nowadays we're using bank transfers. People use Easy Card, for example, to pay for things in 7-Eleven, to pay for the transportation, and so on. However, there is a cost associated with using, for example, a credit card. Most banks or credit card companies will take a percentage of every transaction, and this adds up. This adds an extra cost on to the cost of doing business. So what Bitcoin is trying to do is remove that extra layer, or remove the middleman, let's call it. For example, when you have Visa, when you pay for something by Visa, I go into a store, I hand them my credit card, they put my credit card through to the issuing agency, the Visa card agency, that checks my credit. Then that issuing agency says, okay, we'll pay for this. And so it has to go back to the store. Well, all this takes time and takes money, but more importantly, and this is one of the main reasons a lot of people really like Bitcoin, more importantly, whereas in the past, I would essentially need permission from Visa, a giant conglomerate owned by a banking industry, to purchase something. So even though, for example, and this is the same way with a check, even though I may have a lot of money in the bank, I still would require permission from my bank to buy something.
So yeah, when we are using these paying methods, perhaps we as customers, we have no ideas about the systems behind and about how much these shops need to have these services. So if you are opening a really small store and you want one of these credit card company to install a machine at your store, you need to pay a large amount of money for that service. And sometimes for small business, it's not affordable for them to set up a credit card machine at their place. And as Thomas mentioned, like we get Visa or MasterCard or other big credit card companies. And for each credit card company to set up the machine, you need certain amount of fee for that. So students, if you go to Costco, you'll probably find, at Costco's, we are shopping there, they only accept a certain types of card, or they only accept check or cash, right, in the past.
Right, exactly. People have begun asking the question, why do we need the middleman? And in this case, the middleman is a banking institution. These are banks that are privately owned, yet in control of so much. To buy something with my credit card, I have to give it to the retailer, and the retailer, in essence, asks for permission from the bank to get the money, which I may already have in that bank account, but I still require permission. And the bank returns, yeah, we'll give you permission and we'll guarantee this, but we're going to take usually about 3% often. And the question arises, why? Why do we need such a banking institution to, one, give us permission, and two, just act as a middleman, just taking in the money. Whereas with Bitcoin, we remove the centralization that the banks once stood at, and we decentralize it. So this way, what we would do is transfer one coin from, for example, I could transfer my coin, in transferring my coin to you. To do that, a lot of other computers called blocks would check to see if I actually own that Bitcoin, if I actually have that Bitcoin, and they would verify, yes, Thomas has that Bitcoin, and then they would say, okay, this transaction is okay, and then they would record that this Bitcoin went from me to you, and many, many other computers called blocks would verify it, that I have the coin, and that you now have the coin. So even if a hacker was to go in and try to steal that Bitcoin from you, the hacker would have to change go into many different computers to change it, to change the ledger of all those computers, making it very difficult to actually lie about Bitcoin transactions.
So I think that's the point. Just as Thomas mentioned, in the past, when the banks or other institutions try to verify the purchasing, the process takes a really long time. So sometimes you think, oh, I just swipe the card and they should deduct the money. But it's not the case. Usually the stores or even the department store, they will wait some time to process that. And also if you are using a check, well, sometimes we even mail our check to those companies. So they need time to process that. And it takes lots of people and lots of money to finalize this verifying process. And we probably heard news about people are trying to use credit card to buy something on airplanes. And then somebody will copy the credit card's numbers and something and try to get monies from your credit card. That's the point, that these payment methods like checks or credit cards have their limitations.
Right. And the hope is that cryptocurrencies such as Bitcoin will address these limitations. However, there are also some drawbacks, very serious drawbacks, that come with Bitcoin, for example, and cryptocurrencies, and perhaps we can discuss those a little bit later under what are the drawbacks of cryptocurrencies. But essentially, the main thing that Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies offers us right now is an opportunity to get out from the control of central banking and move that to decentralized accountability based on ordinary people.
So Thomas and I discussed about the currently running paying methods and why that leads to the birth of Bitcoin in our first discussion section. Now we have two questions to ask you. My first question would be, we mentioned several paying methods in our first discussion section. What are they?
The question I would have for you to consider is that how could being decentralized actually be more beneficial to people rather than having to go always through a central organization, such as a central bank, to transfer money or to make financial transactions.
That's the end of our first section. See you